All right, gonna have a little fun here. Gonna play a bit of a game called Pretender or Contender. Pretender or Contender. So what's gonna happen is I've put all the top 25 teams into a list generator, a list randomizer that is, and I'm just gonna randomize the list. And whatever team pops up at the top spot, the number one spot, I'm gonna talk about them as either a contender or a pretender. And what we're trying to look at here is what teams do I believe have a legitimate shot to win the national title. Those are the contenders. But there's going to be the pretenders as well. Those teams are the teams that I believe have no shot at winning the national championship, have no shot of really making a Final Four in my mind. Now, I know Cinderella runs happen, so it's almost impossible to predict. There's going to be a team that's outside that looks like a pretender that will probably make a run. But at least right now, these are the teams that I believe contenders can make the national championship or win it all. And then those who are pretenders that I don't believe really have a shot. So we're going to randomize this list here. And the first team that pops up here is a really interesting one. It's Nebraska. Nebraska. And I am going to say that this is a pretender. And I know it's going to make Dalton upset. I have bounced back and forth, with this. Contender or pretender. Part of me wants to say a contender, but I'm going to lean towards pretender. And here's why. Listen, there's no doubt that this is a good team. This is a solid team. You don't start off a season 20-0 if you're not a good team. All right, that's how this team started the season. They are a solid team. But I think they're a pretender, and here's why I would say this. If you go back to the non-conference schedule and kind of look at their schedule a little bit, they had some really close calls against some bad teams. Like Oklahoma, for example. They beat Oklahoma by 6, 105-99. Letting Oklahoma drop 99 on you is not good. And Oklahoma is one of the worst teams in the SEC this year. Right? They're not a good team. Kansas State, a couple weeks later, they beat by 1 point. And Kansas State's at the bottom of the Big 12 this year. I mean, their coach was roasting their players and got fired. This is not... That's not good, those two games. And then you go, the next game after Kansas State was against Winthrop. You beat them by 7, only 7 points. And I know Winthrop had a close game against Arkansas as well, but it's Winthrop. At the end of the day, it's Winthrop. And the very next game after that, it was South Carolina Upstate. They only beat them by 9. And so there's several close calls here, games that are like way too close for comfort, And it's just, I don't know. It just it makes me worry because it's like if you play that close against Winthrop, when you get into these tournament settings and you play against these inferior opponents and the game's close and the pressure builds up, that's how you end up losing a game like the first round. Now, I'm not going to deny they have some really impressive wins. You beat Wisconsin by 30. You beat Illinois at Illinois. You beat Michigan State. Outside of those wins, and really the Illinois and Michigan State wins, you don't really have a ton of great wins. I mean, outside of that, the best win they have is, I don't know, honestly. I'm trying to decide what their best win might be outside of those wins. Maybe Indiana. You beat Indiana by 6. I don't know, at Minnesota. Like they don't have a ton of other really good wins outside of Michigan State, Illinois, and Wisconsin. And I'm not downplaying those wins against Michigan State and Illinois. Those are great wins. But that's kind of all they've got. Again, they had another close call at Ohio State. Only won by 3 there. Beat Indiana by 6. And then, of course, they've had their struggles recently. Lost to Michigan. Now, I will say, honestly, I was most impressed by them against Michigan at Michigan. They had that game. They could have won that game and let it slip. So I will say they went toe-to-toe with one of the best teams in the country. So got to give them that. They did lose to Illinois the very next game after that. Bounced back against Rutgers, lost to Purdue, and then recently lost to Iowa. And I don't think Iowa's a great team. And I'm sure they're, I don't know if they're going to make the tournament, to be honest. Iowa right now sits at 19-8, and they're a solid team, but not a team that is going to be like a world beater or anything like that. So with all this considered, I think they're a pretender, right? And I think when the pressure's on in the NCAA tournament, it's going to come back to bite them. And here's the thing. They have a 51 offensive rating in KenPom. And to me, I don't think that's good enough. In a tournament setting, have a 51 offense. I get they got some great shooters, but, they've shown at times to have a kind of some tough nights on offense. Like, even though they beat Michigan State, they scored 58. They lost to Iowa, scoring only 52. Like that, you got to be careful. So I think this team's a pretender. Sorry, Dalton. Sorry, anybody who's a Nebraska fan. All right, we're spinning this thing again. Kansas is the team that popped up here in the one spot. Oh man, it's hard to do this on the spot. This is tough. I'm gonna say Kansas is a contender, and I'm gonna say they're a contender if Darren Peterson is fully healthy. If Darren Peterson is fully healthy and playing in the NCAA tournament, I think this team can win a national championship. I'm not predicting that to happen. I said can. Now you may say, well, everybody can win it technically, but I'm talking about like legitimate, like you could legitimately see this team winning it all. And you may say, well, what's the difference between Nebraska and Kansas? Well, number one, Nebraska has no player like Darren Peterson. That's a flat out truth. There's no getting around that. Darren Peterson is an absolute stud. He's a generational talent. This is a number one draft pick. He's a scorer at all levels. You cannot stop him. An absolute stud, bona fide star if he'll stay on the court. Okay, he's going to be a top draft pick, easily top 2 or 3 picks. I know that all this injury stuff is, kind of thrown him for a loop. But listen, with Nebraska does not have a player like that. Okay, that's the first difference. The second difference is Kansas actually has like a ton of really solid wins. Like a lot of wins that you'd go down and be like, wow, that is really, really impressive. They've got a win against Tennessee in the non-conference. Beat whooped Missouri in the non-conference. These aren't great wins, but I'm just saying these are some of their non-con wins. Let me tell you some of their like really good wins. You beat number 2 Iowa State, handled them by 21. You beat BYU. It's a solid win by 8. Beat Texas Tech at Texas Tech. You beat number 1 Arizona at home. You beat Houston most recently, number 5 Houston at home by 13. Guys, these are some top 5 teams that they've beaten. Like this team has shown they can beat anybody. If you're beating Houston, you're beating Arizona, you're beating Iowa State, BYU, Texas Tech, you can beat anybody on a neutral court. And so that's why I say Kansas is a contender. They are a contender. At the same time, I could see them losing in the first round. They lost to Cincinnati by 16 at home. Okay, that's not good. They lost to West Virginia, right, earlier in the season, barely beat TCU, lost to UCF. Like, this team could lose early, but because of their potential, I just consider them a contender. And Bill Self. All right, Bill Self has won the national championship twice. He is an incredible coach. He's going to have his team ready, and I trust Bill Self. So I consider Kansas a contender. If you look at them also in KenPom, their offensive rating is not that much greater than Nebraska's. Are at 44 and 10 on defense. So it's solid. Again, not the greatest offense, but with a player like Darren Peterson, I think if he was healthy all season, that would be a little bit higher. So I'm going to say Kansas is a contender, and I think they can get it done. I'm not predicting that. I'm not going to predict that when the brackets come out, but they can do it. Spinning this again here, Arkansas. Ooh, man, this is a good one here. I'm going to say Arkansas is also a contender. And again, I know that this may make some people mad. How can Arkansas be a contender and not Nebraska? Here's why I'm going to say Arkansas is a contender. And it kind of goes to some of the same things that I said about Kansas, okay? Arkansas has Darius Acuff, okay? And Darius Acuff, I think, is going to be the SEC Player of the Year. I predicted that several months ago. I think he's going to be the Player of the Year. He just dropped 49 against Alabama. We're huge Alabama fans. Y'all know that. We watched that game. This dude's a stud. And we've seen over and over again that elite guard play can be the difference when it comes to March. This team is really, really good and elite, has a good and elite guard play and can be really, really good. I mean, this team is really dangerous, I think, on the offensive end in particular. Just watching them against Alabama, and I know Alabama's not a great defensive team, but this team is really dangerous with the guards and with their offense. And come March, that can be really hard to stop a player like Darius Acuff. But also they have another freshman that we don't talk about enough, Malik Thomas. That dude can stroke it. And he's also a star. Like, this is a really good team. They've got other players like Trevon Brazile, who's really solid. Okay. This is a good team that you got to watch out for come March. And you got to look at, some of their wins. They beat Louisville and Texas Tech in the non-con. Those are two solid wins. And that was with JT Toppin beating Texas Tech, right? So you got some solid wins. They beat Tennessee as well. They beat Vanderbilt, who was ranked 15, still ranked. Tennessee's now ranked and was ranked when they beat them. So you got some solid wins here for Arkansas. And I really like the upside of this team, particularly because of that guard play with Darius Acuff, Malik Thomas, and they've got some other good, supporting cast. I didn't even talk about Billy Richmond and Carter Knox, hard-nosed players. Now here's the thing. They have had some close calls, and I talked about Nebraska barely beating Winthrop. Well, this team barely beat Winthrop by 1, and honestly, they could have lost that game. They beat Samford by 4, so they've had some close calls, and they lost they lost by 22 to Auburn at Auburn, and lost to Georgia. They do have some games that kind of make you wonder, but when you look at their upside and their guard play, I think this is a dangerous team. And out of the SEC, I think this is the team to watch the most when it comes to March. And John Calipari's been there, done that. He's had those Kentucky teams, before. And yes, he disappointed a lot at Kentucky, but he did make the Final Four multiple times, won the national championship, been to the national championship, lost it. Watch out for this team come March. I think this is a contender for sure. So watch out for Arkansas. All right, I'm spinning this again. BYU is a pretender. And you may say, well, how? They just beat Iowa State. Well, listen. BYU is a good team. And A.J. Debonsa is a star and could take over March. I'm not going to lie. I mean, he can be. Here's why I'm going to say that they're a pretender. Mainly because Richie Saunders is out for the season. Okay, Richie Saunders is their heart and soul. He's been there. He's done that. A veteran player, had games where he's dropped in the 30s this year. You lost one of your best players. And I know somebody say, well, we still got it done against Iowa State at home. I know that. I don't see that sustaining over the course of the rest of the season and in the Big 12 tournament and in the NCAA tournament. You may get one great win here and there, but I don't see it from this team. Debonsa has gone off the last 2 games just to have them in these games and win these games. And what happens if Debonsa has a bad game? I think they're in trouble. And so I just look at this team as a pretender right now. I just also don't think defensively, this team is good enough. I will say, all right, 42 defensive rating is actually not as bad as I thought they'd be. But I still don't know if they're going to be good enough on the defensive end. And again, just losing one of your best players, second best player behind Debonsa, that's really hard. Or third best player, and really the heart and soul of the team, that's really tough. So I just, you look at their schedule and I don't think they have any terrible losses. They had a close call against Clemson, who's not looking great right now. They lost to Texas Tech. They had a 4-game losing streak to Arizona, Kansas, Oklahoma State, and Houston. And that Oklahoma State loss is really probably their worst loss, I would say. Had a really close call against Colorado, only beat them by 4. Barely beat Baylor on the road a couple weeks ago. So they have had some close calls recently. That I will say that Iowa State win is really impressive. But when it all comes down to it, I think this is a pretender because they're going to, now that Richie Saunders is out, they're going to rely heavily on Debonsa. And yes, he's a star, but again, what happens if he has a bad game? What happens if he goes down with an injury? They're in big time trouble. And so I think this is a pretender. I don't see them. I see this team honestly losing in the first weekend, being upset and at the most getting to the Sweet 16. So I think BYU is also a pretender. Tennessee, wow, this is an interesting one. Tennessee's always going to be solid on the defensive end. They're 14 in defense, which is honestly a step back for them under Rick Barnes. I think this is a pretender as well. And, they've got some good players like Nate Ament, star freshman, Jacoby Gillespie, transfer from Maryland, Jalen Carey from Vanderbilt, who transferred in. Felix Akpara is a really good defensive player. But I just don't see this team's offense being good enough to get it done. This is the struggle for Tennessee every year, is their offense. They always struggle when it comes to March, really all throughout the season. At different times, offense just kind of stalls out, and it's happened this year. I'm trying to type in their schedule here. They're on offense, Tennessee's at 33, which honestly is not as bad as I thought it was. But, you look at Tennessee's schedule here. Right now, they're 20-7, which is not terrible. But they have some losses that you kind of just want to scratch your head a little bit. Like they lost to Syracuse, who's not good this year at all. Lost to Kansas, no shame in that. Got whooped by Illinois, no shame in that either. Did beat Louisville in the non-conference. But, some of their losses you just kind of look at and it's like, what, especially that Syracuse loss, just like what happened there, and their offense just was a no-show, Same against Illinois, they scored 60 against Syracuse, 62 against Illinois, and that doesn't cut it. Got handled by Arkansas at Arkansas, got handled by Florida at Florida, got beat by Kentucky. And those are the two losses that really make you scratch your head, is the Kentucky losses. You're ahead in both those games, and you let Kentucky come back both times and beat you. Now they do have a solid win at Alabama. That was with Charles Bediako playing in that game. I do believe Alabama was missing 2 starters, but still, I am making excuses for my team. Beat Georgia by 1. They did just beat Vanderbilt, all right, and that's impressive. They're on a 4-game win streak now. I worry about this offense, and I worry about Rick Barnes. He just seems to not be able to get over the hump. And each year this team, is solid, but I really thought they were going to take a step forward this year with Nate Ament and Jacoby Gillespie with offense, and it just hasn't happened. And I think that's going to be their downfall again come March. So I see this honestly being like a second weekend team, like Sweet 16 or, maybe even Elite 8, but nothing beyond that. All right, last one here. We got to get out of here. Vandy. No, we're going to skip that. That's a pretender. Miami, Ohio. All right, guys, this is a pretender. Let me talk about this team. This is 100% a pretender. Listen, hats off to Miami, Ohio for being undefeated. They're 27-0. I mean, this is an absolutely incredible story. I'm not trying to, dunk on them for this, calling them a pretender. Listen, the fact of the matter is their schedule is terrible. Out of the 330 whatever teams, their schedule is in the 200 somethings, I believe, even maybe worse than that. I was talking to Dalton the other day. They have not played a single power conference team. I know it's different in basketball than football with power conferences. They played nobody from the SEC, nobody from the Big 12, nobody from the ACC, nobody from the Big 10, nobody from the Mountain West. None of these teams. They played none of these teams. I'm looking at their schedule and I'm trying. Honestly, I think Buffalo is probably the best team that they've beaten. That's my guess, just looking at their schedule. You just go down like Old Dominion, Trinity, Illinois, Air Force, Mercyhurst, Arkansas, Pine Bluff, UNC Greensboro, IU East, Maine, UNC Asheville, Eastern Kentucky, Wright State, Ball State, Milligan, Bowling. On and on we go. Like they literally have not played anybody. And I know people would say, well, you got to win the games you play against. And, teams wouldn't schedule them or whatever. Listen, I'm just calling like it is, guys. Like, this is not a good schedule, right? You put them in another league, they're not undefeated. And honestly, they're probably struggling in any power league, okay? Look, it's a great story. Congrats. Hats off to them. I hope they make the NCAA tournament. I think they lose the first weekend, to be honest. If they're a 10 seed, whatever 7 seed they're playing, I'm picking the 7 seed. Okay, I just am. I just don't see this team doing anything come March. I think this is absolutely a pretender. If you go in KenPom, like, you got to scroll way down to find this team. And I should have found this beforehand just in case, they popped up. But, 84. Right, they're 84 in KenPom, which is actually way better. But their defensive rating is at 149. Their offensive rating is at 58. Guys, that's just leave it there. All right, this is a pretender. Hats off to you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Contenders and pretenders. There's a lot of contenders out there. It's going to be a great March Madness.